For this next video, we're going to finish up these notes real quick. So what I want to talk about right now is something called the fundamental theorem of algebra. So you might have already noticed this from the first page of notes, but the degree of an equation actually determines how many roots or solution the equation has. So if you look back on the front page, so for instance, equation number 1 had degree 4 and it had 4 solutions. Number 2 had degree 3 and it had 3 solutions. So the fundamental theorem of algebra states that a polynomial of degree n has exactly n roots. So that just means if it's degree 3, then it has 3 roots or solutions. So solutions. So we already saw that with quadratic equations. Quadratic equations are degree 2, and we said that all quadratic equations have 2 solutions. You do have to keep in mind that this includes repeated solutions. Includes repeated solutions. So if a solution happens twice, we count that in this case. Okay, so we're going to finish up with 2 more examples. So both of these we're going to have to factor. And these ones, if you look at the form, you might recognize that this is that quadratic form. It looks like a quadratic, it just has a different degree, different exponents. So number 5, the first thing I actually see, however, is we can divide by 3. Everything is divisible by 3, and if I do that, it's going to reduce my numbers down and make this a bit easier to factor. So 18 divided by 3 is going to be 6, 6x to the 4th, and then I'll get minus 7x squared plus 1 equals 0. So this is going to factor just like a quadratic factors. I know, however, that it's going to have x squareds instead of just x's. Okay, so my a value here is 6, so it's not 1. So we got to take a moment to figure out how to factor this. I notice, though, that my c value is 1. So I know that my last 2 terms in both of my factors has to be 1. And I notice that they multiply to a positive 1, but my middle term is negative. So I'm thinking they're both going to be negative. And then I know my coefficients of my x squareds have to multiply to 6. So I could do 2 and 3, and I could do 6 and 1. If I do 6 and 1, if I think about it real quick, I'll get, when I multiply that out, I'll get negative 6. When I multiply the 2 inside ones, I'll get negative 1, and that does in fact add to negative 7. So this is correct. Well, okay, so now what I can do is I can set both of these equal to 0 and solve. So the second one is a bit easier to solve. I can add 1, take the square root, solving using square root property, and here I get plus or minus 1. The first equation I can also solve using square root property. We can add 1 over, divide by 6, and then we'll take the square root. Okay. This will be x equals plus or minus, this is really square root of 1 over square root of 6. Square root of 1 is just 1. We cannot leave that square root on the bottom, however. So we do need to multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 6. So I'll get plus or minus square root of 6, and then the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 is just going to end up being 6. All right. So we need to check. Our original equation was degree 4. The highest exponent was 4. And here I do have 4 solutions, so I have found all of them. I have plus 1, minus 1, plus square root of 6 over 6, and minus square root of 6 over 6. So I do have 4 solutions. In my next problem, I should also get 4 solutions because this problem number 6 is also degree 4. So this one, I have no GCF, so I just need to go ahead and factor. I encourage you to pause the video and take a moment to try and figure out the factors yourself. You will have x squared and x squared instead of x. It will end up being 2x and 2x, and then -1 and -3. The outside multiplication would get you -6, the inside would get you -2, and that does add to -8. So here I'm going to go ahead and set these both equal to 0 and solve. Both of these can be solved using square root property. So I'm going to add 1 over, divide by 2, take the square root, x equals plus or minus square root of 1 is just 1, over square root of 2. We do need to rationalize though. I need to multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 2. So it'll be square root of 2 over 2. Okay. And then my last step, I'm going to add over 3, divide by 2, and then we're going to take the square root. Plus or minus, we have square root of 3 over square root of 2. So we do need to rationalize this one. We will multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. We actually did a very similar one on the front. So this ends up being square root of 6 over 2. And I do have 4 solutions to my degree 4 equation. So it checks out. All right. So what you're going to do now is you are going to work on this check problem, check for understanding. And this is the problem that is right next to this video. So once you finish this problem, you can put in the answers and then submit this assignment. If you need help from a neighbor, you are welcome to get help from a neighbor on this check problem.